Kyle here from All Media Reviews. Here to do a different kind of video. I've been seeing some more of these type of channels, like video games, old school video games, console video games, arcade games, and I have a lot of nostalgia for that. I know this is like departure from music and vinyl and CDs and lists and that kind of stuff, and even like movies and television. But I don't talk. I talk a little bit of sports, but anyway, um, it's called like gaming channel or someone on. You get recommendations on YouTube all the time, and I subscribe to one channel called Defunct Games. What was the name of that channel? If you go to like your home, because I was on it, and then I forget the name of it. It's called Gaming something. Um, yeah, it's called no. Yeah, you get of course recommendations for S. Anyway, I'll maybe put a link on it. The guy did a pretty good list. He looked on Reddit, the top 10 Nintendo Entertainment Center games, and then the top 10. He had linked Sega. He just call it Genesis games. Sega Genesis to me. Genesis games. And it got me thinking. I could do a few lists. It would just be kind of short lived for the most part. I'm not going to turn this channel more into the focus on that, but so when I could tell my story briefly, and then I may do some other videos later about ranking because I'm not doing a ranking in this video because I haven't done the preparation. My apologies, but I started out like a lot of kids. I'd played Atari, whatever it's called, 6500, whatever the 4500. But we didn't own. My family didn't own. We had like family members and some friends that had the Atari games like Pitfall and the basketball. There was some other like Pong was on there. I can't remember if Pong was on there. Anyway, when we go to the arcade, of course they had games like the arcade games. I mean, I got a lot of mileage out of playing arcade games when I was a kid. Um, and then my brother and I had our bar mitzvah together. We had a double. We were close in age and more financially feasible, and it was just more convenient to do one thing. But we had a bunch of our friends and family members. I don't know who it was, just our friends. Some people joined together and bought us, and that was in 1988. A Nintendo Entertainment System. But actually, backtracking, before that, my dad had bought. My dad was always into computers. That's what he went into professionally. But um, he bought a Commodore 64. Before that, we'd played some computer games on some other things like whatever is it, Green Globs and Where in the World Carmen San Diego and some of the stuff like on the Apple IIe at school we got to play sometimes. But the first one was the Commodore 64, and so I don't have it right now, but I think I'll do a separate video on my top 5 or top 10 that I can think of Commodore 64 games. I could name a few names just to throw some bones. One of them was Skate or Die. One of them was Realm of Possibility. One of them was Zork, which I never got very far in that game. There were many versions, of course. Those text-based games. There was one other. Those were the main ones. Jordan versus Bird was one of the other ones, and we even had a joystick that hooked up to it. Um, but we got the Nintendo, of course. We were going to the arcade, playing games like Ring King was one of my favorites, but Punch Out, Dragon's Lair, Dig Dug, etc. The original Mario Brothers. But Nintendo Entertainment System, you got the one we got at least for our bar mitzvah in '88 was it came with Duck Hunt and of course Super Mario Brothers, which is a lot of people's favorites. So we had that for several years. We used to rent games from the movie rental stores, of course, and then we'd buy games occasionally. Stuff was expensive, so I don't know. My parents, sometimes or some of our family members would give us gifts for like our birthdays or for Hanukkah. But then around 90, I mean, we had the Nintendo for many years. Tetris, of course, was another game we had on there. I never had a Game Boy. I always wanted one. We had like the handheld electronic games, which I bought a couple of those. So, but when I was like a senior in high school, it was like a junior in high school. I think it was a junior in high school. We ended up getting a Sega Genesis. I want to say it was my senior year. Maybe my senior year. So this is not the original one I had, but I ended up buying this from I don't know if I got this from the store that was closing. This place Discland out in Bloomington, but this was with my friends, especially in high school. one of the most addictive gaming systems. I mean, I liked the Nintendo a lot, Nintendo Entertainment System, but it was maybe about the Genesis, you know. And then eventually I also ended up getting a a Nintendo, a Super Nintendo, sort of talked into it. Of course, the controller. I had problems with the controller sometimes where I would get like blisters on my thumb. I would get a sore thumb. So, and you know, on the Nintendo, I played a variety of games. I'm just getting to throw bones. I'll do a Nintendo list maybe separately soon. But besides Super Mario Brothers, it was like Double Dribble, Double Dragon, the double games. Um, there were a few others. One of them was the original RBI baseball. So, and of course my love of and Punch Out, which I never was able to beat Mike Tyson. I got Mike Tyson's Punch Out. I played the original Punch Out in the arcade, but Mike Tyson's Punch Out. Um, but you know, I always loved Double Dribble, especially. And then you know there were a few other games like Tecmo Bowl I played a little bit, but when the Genesis came out, they had Electronic Arts, the big company EA. The EA Sports thing was just starting, and I got kind of consumed in sort of not 100%. The Genesis came with Sonic the Hedgehog, but it was like 90% this sports game, that sports game. And so I'll show my collection of it is almost it's entirely sports games because I got rid of I don't know if I sold it. My mom got rid. I can't remember what happened when I went to college. It was like a year or two after college. Eventually, I eventually got a PlayStation, and I wasn't really feeling it the way that the graphics. From 16-bit to whatever it was. I had a Sega CD at one point too. Never got a Dreamcast or anything like that, but 16-bit is like sort of my taste in console games, home entertainment games. Um, but so it was basically that I got rid of it, and so I ended up finding this years later at Discland and stuff like that, just collecting all the sports games basically, and they were the most addictive. So, and I'll do a list, but again, this video is not for a list. This is just showing the collection. So I'll do a ranking maybe at some point. I don't have the boxes, of course. They didn't come with. I just found these games at this store. They didn't have. They just had them separately. They were selling these for like a couple bucks a piece. It's $3. So I will say this though. This is not. This is spoiling it a little bit, but this is my number one game. It's my brother's number one game of all time. It's EA Sports is the second in the NHL hockey series. The first one I liked, but this is the best one. The gameplay, NHL '93. The Vancouver Canucks were my go-to. Sadly, they didn't have the Minnesota North Stars, so I didn't have a home team to latch into. The previous original it was like EA. I think it was NHLPA hockey, maybe, because this is NHLPA, but it was just NHLPA hockey. Had the North Stars. That was for the last year they were actually in Minnesota before they moved to Dallas. But yeah, Pavel Bure and the Vancouver Canucks were my go-to. Although I played every team. The fun challenge of it, besides playing against friends, if you were playing the computer, is that, and you could play the playoffs, I believe. I think they had a playoff in here. Was playing like a bad team against the best team. So Detroit was really good and the Blackhawks were really good. So you play like the Hartford Whalers against them. So it was challenging. But there was one deke move that was just like the go-to. They didn't have one-timers, you know. They did have stats. I'm pretty sure they had the playoffs, but they did not have a regular season. So, anyway. So I have NHL 94, the year after, the first year with a full season, I believe you could play out, and one-timers. My friends, a lot of people online praise this one as the greatest. I say this is superior. This one's superior to this one. Still, I'm sorry, it is. The gameplay is better. It got too done up a little bit in the graphics. Even though this game looks better. There's more music. Anyway, I could be wrong. I'm not sure. 95 might be, because I have 95, might be the first one that they had an actual season. 95, and they had the one time. They enhanced a lot of stuff, of course. It was still fun. Every player had ratings, of course. I did not play with line changes very much. We just play the short periods, with like 5-minute periods, and then, games would go quicker. I don't have an hour and a half to play one game. Anyway, NHL 96, they had memory cards. And then NHL 97, this is right before the PlayStation came out. I do have a PlayStation downstairs in the basement. Maybe I'll end up showing that at some point. So, but the NHL series was my favorite series, a lot of people's favorites. So I'll show the sort of elephant in the room next. The collection I rebought, again. I do have 3 of the Madden games. I don't have the original, the first two, but 94, 95, and 96. You know, I can't see. It's too bad we didn't have I'd rather play the 98 Vikings and win the Super Bowl. I knew they started adding like historical teams and like all-star, all-pro teams, stuff like that. I also have the Joe Montana Sega Sports game, which was actually pretty fun. It was a contrast. And actually, I got a book for it. I don't know when I bought that, they included the book. But I don't think they had. There were things that were missing on this. Like one had the other. Like the EA got all the rights to the names and stuff. So anyway, so then the basketball, which was also a favorite of mine. Of course, there was NBA Jam later. Mortal Kombat. Outside of Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter were two other games on the Genesis. I remember were pretty big, and also the Super Nintendo. But so I ended up buying a few copies. I realized I bought two copies of some of these, but the first one, I think this is the first one, 1990, Lakers versus Celtics. So this is when they still had Magic and Bird. So I have two copies of that. Fine. So then 91, you have the Bulls versus the Lakers. Of course, that was the finals year before Jordan versus Magic. Again, I'm not sure if they had names. They had the numbers, but they had the names. So then the year after that was 93 was the Bulls versus Blazers. The Clyde Drexler, Terry Porter, Jerome Kersey Trailblazers team versus the what I actually contend is the best Bulls team, the 92 Bulls team, with Horace Grant, of course, and Jordan and Pippen. So then this came out in 94. I'm missing the one from 93, I think. The one where Jordan played the Suns. NBA Showdown 94. So this would have probably been, this might have been the year after that. I'm not sure. Then 95, this would have been the poster. Jordan wasn't in this game. When the Olajuwon played the Knicks, I believe. Houston played the Knicks. And then 96, again, then Jordan's return. This would have been after he returned, but they didn't win they lost to the Magic. The Magic lost to the Rockets. Because every year is always the previous team's roster, usually. Or that's the way they did it back then. And then I have two copies of 96. That was the last NBA. The NBA was fun. It wasn't as fun as hockey, but it was fun. You'd have guys, hitting free throw. You had the free throw that would go really quickly. So then I had baseball. And baseball, of course, on EA Sports came to be a marathon. The Nintendo version of RBI Baseball was perfect because you wouldn't play a full season now and it would take forever. So, and I played these games. I know the cool things are like hidden players in there. You could play like classic players. So it's called, at one point it was called, okay, so it was just normal MLB PA from 94. I think this is the year the Blue Jays beat the Phillies, that roster. So you'd have Kirby Puckett in there, of course. You'd have some of the classic guys, McGuire and everything like that. I'm not sure if they had every team. They probably did. And I have a second copy of that right here. So then you had Tony La Russa, who was the A's manager, and then he became the Cardinals manager. Baseball 95. And that was right after the strike, so this was like the go-to when you didn't have baseball to watch. And then Triple Play 96. I want to say Triple Play was the year that it came out in 95, actually, I think. Yeah, it did. And I just tried playing, I played 40 games and it just got to be tedious because the game would take forever. And then I have the Gold Edition. Yeah, this is the year after. This would have been the year that the Braves beat the Indians, I believe, in 95, so the year after, 96. I don't know why it was gold exactly. There were other things with it. So, all right. So moving on to some others. College football I found was in some ways more enjoyable than the Madden series. So I have two of the college football games. One was, and I won this on the Ron Barr program that was on KFAN radio. It was a national program at night. Talk show trivia kind. I called up and got in and got the trivia question right, and they sent it to me. The Bill Walsh College Football. You had student body right. You had the different plays. It was similar to Madden, but it was obviously college. There was you had a 2-point conversion back then. The NFL didn't have 2-point conversions, and I don't remember who I played with frequently. It was you play the top 25. I'm not even sure if they had a schedule. They might have, but of course Bill Walsh coached Stanford at that point, You know, I don't know if he's still around. Former 49ers coach who won 3 Super Bowls or whatever. And then he did another one the year after. Yep. Bill Walsh College Football 95. And I know one of these had the Gophers, so this might have been the one. Although I remember playing the PlayStation college football and playing the Gophers too, my home Minnesota native. So the other game that was college based that I played, and I think this is the only one they had on the Sega Genesis. They had more that ended up on other systems I know later, but again it lost me with the graphics and the polygons and stuff like that. Coach K college basketball. They had a lot of classic teams in here besides that year. This came out in '94, I think. Yeah, or '95 actually. But you could play the top 25. You could play the tournament. That was the funniest thing. You could finally play the NCAA tournament. They didn't have names, but they had the numbers and they had the teams. But then you could also play against like Michigan State '79 and Georgetown '85, or I don't. I was like 20 or 30 teams that Krzyzewski actually picked out. So it was like the graphics and the basis was still based on the same thing that the NBA Live and the NBA games that EA did. It was just with college teams. And the shorter games, of course, it wasn't in quarters; it was just halves at that point. I think, at least. Anyway, so let's see here. What I've got, just a few left here. So I was, well, actually, let me show these first. One game that came out in '94 for World Cup was, yeah, it came out in '93, but it was for the FIFA World Cup in '94. FIFA Soccer. This was totally addictive. As another case of when you'd play like the crappy countries against like Brazil or Italy or Germany or something like that, it was enjoyable. You could play the World Cup. So you could play the Qatar, or I had my favorites. I would play like Cameroon, and I would play the US sometimes, but this was a fun game. It was really interactive. You could play as a group. But anyway, FIFA Soccer. I think I ended up getting one for the PlayStation 2 that was okay, but and then this is a game I bought when I was at Discland when they were trying to get rid of these. I don't know if I ever actually played it. Mario Andretti Racing. So it was a racing game. Never been huge into auto racing, NASCAR, IndyCar, a little bit, but I don't know. For a video game's sake, it's kind of fun. So the last three that are in my sort of semi-revived sports, basically Electronic Arts video game, Sega Genesis game collection are three of the PGA Tour Golf series, the '91 PGA Tour Golf. And I don't know if they had a lot of the players in here, maybe. But '91 you had like Greg Norman and Tom Kite and those people like that. PGA Tour Golf 3 in '94. Again, this is pre-Tiger, so you know you had some of the best. I don't know if you had Tom Lehman, but you know one of these ones. There was one on the Nintendo though that was like the Mario brother, basically. Um, and then the last one, actually, this is the same thing. It was the PGA European Tour, so it had more European Tour players, like Ian Woosnam or Colin Montgomery. I don't know if some of the older guys were in here, but yeah, I mean, golf. I guess the Tiger Series has been. I mean, if I had one game, I would probably play that. I like playing Golden Tee at. Actually, I like to buy one. They have it at Costco. They have just like a floor model. When my wife's shopping for clothes that they have there, I usually spend. I'll play 5, 6, 7 holes. So that's basically my collection. It's not really a lot. I'm not showing the PlayStation today. I guess I have too many. I had one or two non-sports games related, but I'll try to come up with a few lists because I could see maybe come up with a list of Commodore 64 and then Nintendo. I don't know if this could be just a one-off list for each one, but not do like a separate video for all these different systems. Sega Genesis and maybe even an arcade. Well, the thing is, the arcade would be take more research. I could come up with a sort of a vague top 5 or top 10 maybe, just in arcade games. But I might be able to do a Super Nintendo, but I always felt like Super Nintendo was inferior to Genesis, though. In almost every case, there were a few exceptions, but for the sports games, the NHL wasn't as good. NHL '94 on the Super Nintendo was not as good. It was choppy. The control, I never liked it as much. I had people that disagreed with me, and yeah, I mean, there were a few others. I forget what game it came with. I'll just get this out of the way. I never played anything past the Super Mario Brothers. Never played the second one. Never played the third one. I played the Game Boy, but so anyway, that's my kind of offshoot video games, Electronic Arts sports games collection history kind of thing. I'd like to maybe get back into this. I don't have a television that I could hook this up to, but I might be able to get an adapter that I could use that would work. I've got these monitors that I'm not using in my other room that I was using for my work that I don't need to use anymore because I brought my monitors home from work, and I could try setting it up. More of it just I need the time and stuff like that. But I'm gonna try getting back into doing the music related videos, of course. I'm not sure I'll do a song list from 2024 or the decade. I might, but then it just starts to boggle my mind. I hate trying to rank songs and stuff like that. I haven't made one, so. But thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.